What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Two Friends Fighting. I'm Jackson.
I'm Robbie.
And we have, obviously, again, we are shooting virtually because we're still in the midst of a stay-at-home order for Ontario. But what we'll be doing today is we will be breaking down the big fight card that happened this past weekend. Conor McGregor fought Dustin Poirier, and if you don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you probably go away right now. But Robbie, what are your initial thoughts? What happened? Can you tell the people what happened to start off? What happened UFC 257?
What happened was, I guessed right. Out of the three of us talked about it last week, I was the one person who actually called it for what happened. Dustin Poirier in the second round, I think at 2 minutes and 2 seconds in the second round, TKO'd Conor McGregor with some incredible punches, crazy boxing, and shocked the world, and really put his stock a lot higher in the UFC for sure.
Man, what a crazy result, eh? Like, I was not expecting this at all. Obviously, I picked Conor McGregor to win. I also picked Dan Hooker in the co-main event.
So did I.
Just seems like whenever I make a pick, you should just go with the opposite. Conor McGregor was a 3-1 favorite too.
Yeah. Oh, that was crazy. If anyone, so funny enough, get this. The one time I'm right, I didn't put money on Poirier. If I had put money on Poirier, I would have made some dough, man. Yeah. Like that.
You know what? Although I did pick Conor McGregor, literally before the fight, I wanted to put some money down on Poirier because I didn't know what the odds were. I didn't think it was going to be like 3-1 favorite. I literally said, man, we should put some money on Dustin Poirier, because although I did pick Conor McGregor, when you're picking fights, it's like, who do you think will win? But then there's also like, okay, what are the chances of this person winning? I thought Dustin Poirier had a very good chance to win. I was just slightly leaning towards Conor McGregor.
Well, you can almost never bet against Conor because he's so good, right? And he was looking fantastic leading up to it, mentally, physically, whatever. But then again, so was Dustin. And to be totally honest with you, even though in our last episode I picked Dustin, the closer we got to the fight, I started to get less confident in my pick, because how often has Conor just taken guys at a high level and put them to shame? Mm-hmm. So, which is probably why I didn't bet. Even though I did pick Poirier, I wanted Poirier. He got the win. I'm happy about that. I wish I put some money on that, because it would have just like elevated the weekend.
But I just find that it's so hard to actually it's so hard to get your predictions right. Like, you can have all these like thoughts in the world. There can be like plenty of logic involved with your thoughts. Like going into the fight, here's what I was thinking, and we did kind of talk about this on the pre-fight breakdown, but here's what we're thinking going into the fight. Conor McGregor knocked him out in the first round in their last fight, right?
Within the first minute, I think.
Within the first minute. We know that Conor McGregor has historically had great power, and we know that Dustin Poirier has had a tendency to get hit. We know all those things, right? There's also a couple unknowns, right? Conor McGregor hasn't been in the ring for a while, right? So what's going on with him? But then he's talking a big game, saying that he's the best version of himself. So it's hard to tell, is this true? Is this not true? And even it could, like, he could believe it. He might actually believe it. But the thing is, what we saw in the actual fight was Conor McGregor, from my eyes, he did not look like the best version of himself. For one, I thought that he was he was not light on his feet at all. He was extremely heavy on, especially his lead leg. He was heavy on his lead leg, which made those leg kicks, those low calf kicks, hurt even more, right? I saw him being very, very heavy, he was almost like sluggish or slow. For me, he did win that first round. First round, but not as impressively as I thought he was going to win the first round.
Yeah. Absolutely, I agree, because I was surprised because he actually started incorporating more of the wrestling. He was pushing Poirier up against the cage and really make it like more of a clinch fight, which I really didn't see him doing. I thought he was going to do what he usually does, move his head, switch his stances, be light on his feet, like you said, and use his stellar boxing that we've seen, like when he knocked out Eddie Alvarez a while ago, like with that killer left hand. It was amazing. But
and there was no excuse from him saying like maybe he had an injury ahead of time. There's no reason for him to have been so sluggish. He was very heavy on, especially he sort of leans forward a little bit. Did you notice that? He's leaning on his lead leg to sort of reach out for those boxing strikes, those punches, right? Problem with that is if you're doing that and you're not checking leg kicks, your calf is going to be destroyed. Like Dustin Poirier has great calf kicks. He's got great kicks, and you can tell that they were impeding McGregor's movement. So for me watching it, I'm like, especially like from a Muay Thai background, we come from a Muay Thai background. It's like, how do you not check those kicks? I was literally thinking like, this is amateurish level kickboxing. Like you have to check the kick. And even Dustin Poirier said after the fight, he said, Conor wasn't checking the kicks correctly. He said he wasn't turning his shin out, so he was still landing like on the muscle, which is like, how do you not prepare for that?
Yeah, honestly, you're exactly right. Because historically, we've seen Conor do very well with actually moving his feet while he punches and not leaning like he was. Even in a previous interview, George St. Pierre, who we both think is like one of the greatest of all time, said that Conor was one of the best guys at like not letting his back foot stay there and bring it with him while he punches, and he was. But we didn't see that in his previous fight. He was doing exactly what you said. He was leaning in on his punches with his chin. It was going really far forward, and he was putting all that.
That's another one of those amateurish mistakes, right, Robbie? Like where you let your back leg come up, your back foot come off the mat and sort of lean in, right? You're supposed to sit down on your punches. Your back foot should never come off the mat.
Yeah, if anything, it should step in with you as you punch, and not, you shouldn't lean so far forward. What Conor was doing was the opposite of that. I think maybe he was possibly, whether he was a bit rusty because his last fight was against Cowboy Cerrone like 13 months ago. Obviously that was due to the pandemic, obviously, but maybe it was also because he was overconfident in the fact that last time he fought Dustin, it was over in under a minute with those punches that worked. Maybe he was just, it might have been a combination of the two. He was just rusty but didn't realize it, but he was still just as confident as he was because he's been on this tear for years and years and years. And he had that idea that he was the better version of himself, which he might have been. But he didn't count on Dustin being the best version of himself either. That's
what I was just about to bring up. So we had a question before they fought. We were thinking, has Dustin Poirier made enough progress to catch up with Conor McGregor over all this time, right? They haven't fought in many years, right? So the question for us was, has Dustin Poirier made enough progress to now be able to compete with McGregor on the feet? Because as we saw, I mean, the question was answered. He obviously clearly did. And it seems like McGregor's progress for himself had slowed, if not like went down. He really did not look like the best version of himself. He was not light on his feet. He was not checking any leg kicks. He didn't really have a whole lot of activity in that first round. And I'm wondering if that's, you can credit Dustin Poirier for his head movement. I'm also wondering, was he trying to conserve his energy for the later rounds? Like he just didn't throw a whole lot of strikes as we're used to seeing him.
Yeah, which is another weird thing that I saw too, because like even then, exactly like you said, what we saw was Conor McGregor moving forward. Obviously, he was kind of trying to move Poirier back like he normally does, but he ended up getting into like a clinch fight versus what he's good at, which is staying long and landing those really crisp, powerful, accurate punches, whether it's his right or left hand, because he's really good with his left hand at landing those. But we just didn't see that. We saw him closing the distance and pushing Poirier up against the cage. And whether Poirier was getting tired, whether Conor was getting tired, I don't think so. I think Poirier's conditioning was absolutely on point. Because when he landed that first shot that kind of stunned him, he smelled blood and he went for it, and he landed some of the best punches I've seen him throw in his career, and his career has been phenomenal anyway.
Yeah, and I think that his boxing looked so good because his kickboxing was so good. Because those kicks, just like Conor said himself, he said it deadened his leg, right? He couldn't move on that lead leg, which is exactly what happens when you don't have the ability to move your calf around. Like, if you're getting your calf completely chopped with hard low kicks, that's what happens. You can't move properly. And then when Dustin actually landed a good punch, again, Conor doesn't have the ability to circle away because he's not light on his feet. First of all, he wasn't light on his feet before the leg kicks, but then especially after that, he's not going to be able to circle out and avoid those punches.
Yeah, those calf kicks, if I can be totally honest with you, I mean, obviously they're a big part of, they're a part of MMA that is definitely changing the way people are looking at striking, because anything below the knee in kickboxing or Muay Thai isn't allowed. So this is like a strike that's exclusive to mixed martial arts, and I don't really know how I feel about it. I'm not sure even if I were to fight MMA, if I would throw them. Obviously, you run the risk of hurting your foot in the person's shin. Also, you run the risk of like really messing up their calf muscle, because there's this whole thing about like messing up the muscle, causing blood to clot, and like obviously Conor could barely walk when the fight was over, and it can cause like longer lasting issues.
Well, that's part of.
I personally am not a fan.
For me, I think that just because I think it's very easy to defend. That's why I don't really have that much of a problem with it. Literally, all you have to do is turn your shin out. Turn your shin out, maybe dip your knee into it a little bit too, and they're not going to be throwing any more of those low calf kicks.
You make a good point, obviously, and that's the same thing with a regular low kick anyway. Like, if the more you defend it, the less they'll want to throw it, because they're the ones getting more hurt. Yeah. But for the people who can't defend it, like we've seen people lose to low kicks, not even just calf kicks, like the regular classic quad low kick, who are unable to defend it. And I just feel like obviously in this case it paid off for Poirier. His stock went way up. Like, if you look at his Instagram, he's already gained like so many followers that what they already had. Yeah, which is I'm a
new Dustin Poirier Instagram follower. I jumped on
there. There you go, right? Like, you knew who he was, but maybe you didn't follow him before. But now with this win, it's like suddenly now you want to see more of what's going on, right? That's pretty much how it works.
And I think for me, it's what the feeling. I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about it. For me, like, I love Dustin Poirier. I think he's like a great guy. I think he's a great representative for mixed martial arts. For me, however, when Conor McGregor wins, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but when Conor McGregor wins, it makes the sport way more exciting, right? Because what's this next big matchup going to be, right? Not like when he loses, nobody is really wondering, what's Conor McGregor going to do? He's sort of like fell by the wayside, and who knows when we're going to see him next, right? There's not really a lot of hype around Dustin Poirier. I mean, there to some extent, but when Conor McGregor is winning, the sport is more exciting.
Well, that's because he's done like a brilliant job of like marketing himself and putting his stock so high, because people want to see him fight. Like, whether he loses or wins, people are always concerned about what's he going to do next. Yeah. The thing is now, like, he doesn't need to fight to make money. He's made enough money. Like, even though he lost, he still made more money than Dustin Poirier did this weekend, right? Like, I think I can't even know how much more he made. I think the numbers are stupid.
I think it's pretty
Dustin
much
Poirier
like
still got paid a good amount of money. I think over $1 million.
It's pretty much like, because he won, he's like fucking Rodan or something. And
Rodan?
and like
is that a Godzilla
Conor
reference?
McGregor's like Godzilla, but like who wants
That's
to see like a Rodan solo film?
Yeah,
you know,
that's
like,
right. It's true. That's
cares.
actually a good reference. Yeah, nobody really wants.
Makes sense. He's one of like the sub monsters, basically. He's still incredibly powerful to watch, but he's not Godzilla. He's not King Kong.
Godzilla.
You don't make those.
Yeah,
that's interesting. No, that's good.
Yeah, so again, like for me, I was having those conflicting feelings, because like it's sort of like, like again, like I said, I love Dustin Poirier, and I'm actually really happy that he won, because like he is such a great guy. He's doing so much for charity, and this actually I think will do a lot of good, just generally for his charity, and even for the sport, it could do some good, because Conor McGregor sometimes has a tendency to like hold up the top of the division, right? But again, I was a little bit disappointed only in the fact that we wouldn't have this next big fight to look forward to, right? Like, Khabib's not coming back now. Khabib's not coming back to fight Dustin Poirier. He just beat Dustin Poirier.
He beat Conor as well, so he had no reason. And
but that Conor versus Khabib, that rematch though would have been big. That would have been a huge rematch.
Absolutely, but you know why? Because very similar to that Rodan reference, right? Like Conor McGregor is the name in itself. It doesn't matter who's with him in that card. You'll watch that card. For Dustin to have that high stock currently, it has to be Poirier versus somebody. Those two names together have to create that big card.
Right.
Whereas you can just have McGregor on a card and people will watch. It doesn't matter who the other person is, right? Yeah. It's just like, exactly, like Godzilla can have a solo movie. So can King Kong. If you bring them together, it's a great thing. But if it was to be a Rodan movie, it had to be Rodan versus King Kong or something like that. There has to be that other draw. And I think Dustin can eventually get his name up there if he keeps on doing what he's doing. But
his star definitely gets a little bit brighter, right? Like you said, his Instagram following has certainly went up since the victory, right? If you beat Conor McGregor, you get some of the rub, right? You're not going to turn into Conor McGregor. You're not going to have that level of stardom overnight. But I think, similar to how Nate Diaz beat him the first time, right? That they fought. His star obviously got a lot bigger, right? But I'd like to ask you now about where do you think that lightweight division goes? Where do you think Dustin Poirier goes from here? Where does Conor go from here? And then what do you think about the whole top of the division more generally? Like, what goes on with the title? Khabib apparently is not coming back. So if he relinquishes his belt, what happens?
If Khabib doesn't come back, which he probably won't, he doesn't have a reason to. So from what I've understood, Conor and Dustin have already agreed to do their rubber match because now they both beat each other one time. So
is that something you're interested in?
I mean, maybe. Again, anytime Conor fights, it's going to be that crazy, right? And now they're going to market it as being like Conor's coming back from a loss. Dustin's going to have this momentum behind him. They're going to market it a very certain way to get the people behind it. I guarantee you. They'll probably put another big co-main event on the card too, maybe. Yeah. But I think
is that that's a fight where is that a fight that you can see Conor coming back to win?
Probably. I think he comes back from his losses extremely well.
He does.
He was very humble in his defeat, though, and he was very graceful towards Dustin for sure. And so Dustin was very graceful.
He's really known for that, like being like a good loser. Yes, he was very gracious in defeat.
Yeah, but historically, same as Dustin, right? Conor up until today has never lost a rematch, especially one that he like lost prior to. So I think sometimes he needs that like kick in the ass or punch in the face to like really amp it up.
Because if we actually look at the fight, we see what did Conor do in that fight. So Dustin Poirier was actually asked after the fight, did Conor hurt you at all? And Poirier said yes, he did. He stung him with one of those left hands, and Poirier even followed up saying that if Conor had like rushed in and threw another like couple of good strikes, he would have been in big trouble. So I mean, when we take that into our consideration, maybe Conor does have a chance. He does still have incredible power. I think that he will come a little bit better prepared for those leg kicks if they do fight again in a rematch. Yep. But I don't know. Like he really didn't look good. He really didn't look good in that fight.
And now you got to think about how confident Dustin will feel in this third fight, especially if you saw like later in the first and before he knocked him out in the second. Down. He took him down. He was also landing those punches, and he was saying like, "Oh, I got you,"
yeah.
Like pointing at him, smiling, like he was having a good time.
Yeah. His
striking, like he got into his rhythm, got into his zone, and was happy there, and it paid off for him very well. So maybe if he takes that confidence into a third fight, if it happens, I think it'll go his way. But likewise, if Conor comes back with that rejuvenated like feel to him, he can also turn it his way if he fixes up the leg kicks. Goes back to his like old way of boxing where he's moving his feet, wasn't so heavy. It can go either way. Same thing as this one. It can go either way.
I think that when we look at Conor's boxing in that particular fight, he does have a tendency to overreach, right? Like we already mentioned, like he's actually bringing his back foot off the mat. But one of the biggest things that I noticed is that you've already sort of mentioned this, that he does kind of leave his chin out there, right? He throws his long strikes. He is very heavy on his lead leg, and then his chin is there to be hit. And Dustin did ding him a couple times, even before he started chopping away at his leg. So I think especially once Conor's leg was compromised, the fight was over. The fight was over after you could see Conor start sort of hobbling around on his leg. I knew right away, like there's not a chance. He doesn't have enough power. You can't put enough power into your strikes once your leg is that badly damaged.
People forget how easy it is to make one mistake, right? Because I'll go back to him fighting Eddie Alvarez again, Conor. He was doing the same thing. He was still overreaching, but he was so much longer, and Alvarez didn't throw those long shots that like it looked like Conor was like boxing like a champ. Yes, he's moving his head, but he was still overreaching with his chin. If Alvarez had thrown a little more shots, maybe he would have landed it. So I think Dustin just brought that like confidence to the fight and like those proper punches and the sustained conditioning that he had and won it. Like, not saying that Conor like maybe was a better version of himself, but absolutely, like he still was doing the same thing.
For me, what I'd actually like to see in that lightweight division, though, although they are talking about the Conor versus Dustin rematch for the third time, what about Charles Oliveira, man? Charles Oliveira is my pick to be, if he gets a title shot, he's my pick to be the champion come the end of the year.
The way he dismantled Ferguson, I was mind blown. I didn't think it was going to happen like that.
Man, he's so good. His jiu-jitsu is crazy. His striking has made leaps and bounds. He's a good striker now too. Like he can definitely hang with Dustin, I think, and his cardio looks good. But I really think that his jiu-jitsu, if he gets anybody down, he's cementing them. I'd like to see him versus Khabib, to be honest.
I still think Khabib would beat him because I've seen Khabib beat so many other high-level grapplers. But I think if Oliveira were to fight Conor or Dustin, he would win. But Khabib, when it comes to the ground game, I don't think so.
For me, I think I've picked against Khabib so many times because I'm like, I think he's finally going to meet his match. And I'm falling into the trap again. I think that Charles Oliveira would be able to beat him. I think that Khabib relies on his wrestling so much, right? But I think that's
so good though. Because
Oliveira has crazy jiu-jitsu, crazy level jiu-jitsu. This guy has the most submissions in the lightweight division. The second most has like 2 or 3 less than he does in history in the lightweight division.
He's 100% like his jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. It's just like, it's not even the fact that Khabib's like wrestling or sambo is so good. It's also the fact that he's so strong. He takes your grappling and nullifies it. You can't do anything about it. That's why I think Khabib was able to beat Oliveira. Yeah. But in terms of today's rankings, I think if they give him the shot, that he will win. But right now, the way the UFC works is unfortunately like what's going to make the most money. And right now, that will always be Conor.
I could honestly see them going with the winner of the co-main event, Michael Chandler. I could see them doing Michael Chandler versus Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier has said that he's not really interested in that fight, though.
He said
it's Michael Chandler's first fight. He wins one fight, the guy that I just beat, and he gets a title shot. How is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. So he was literally quoted by saying, like, if that's the case, I'll just sell my hot sauce instead of that. Like, screw that. Yeah. So he's not interested, but I think that's fair though. Like, he just got to the UFC. He's not even ranked yet.
How is he going to jump over Charles Oliveira? How does Michael Chandler jump over Charles Oliveira? That's crazy. You can't do that.
Yeah, you can't.
Charles just beat Tony Ferguson.
Yeah. They do that because of who has, like, again, the better stock, right? Who's the name that's going to draw in more the fans. And Oliveira is great, but maybe his stock isn't that high yet, and not everyone really cares. I think it definitely got raised when he fought Ferguson, and I would love to see that fight. I want to see Oliveira take that division for sure because he's so good and deserves it.
He's crazy.
But I think it's like, again, Dana's like, just like, what's going to make me the most money? And you can see it. When they were raising Dustin's hand, you can see him in the background like this. his head down, like,
Yeah.
because he knows, like, Conor is his money machine.
He's his meal ticket, right?
100%.
He made, yeah.
It's actually,
you could even tell, like Dana White, like in his post after the event, he had an interview and he like was all depressed. Like you could tell he was like not happy about that fight outcome.
absolutely.
And you know
And again,
what? Not just that, like, okay, we don't have something to look forward to, and like, oh, who's Conor's next big fight? But I was kind of disappointed in the fight in general because it just sort of like didn't live up to my expectations. Conor really just didn't look good, and like he just didn't look good in the fight. I thought it was going to be at least a little bit more competitive. Like he was going to be more competitive at least. You know what I mean?
yeah, you thought he would probably throw a little more punches and do what he's usually better at and not push Dustin against the cage the entire time. I was surprised too. And he was doing this, you had Dustin against the cage, he was doing this open palm, like almost like slap to his head. Like it wasn't even punching him. Like
How effective is that really? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's probably annoying. It probably hurts a little bit, but like compared to the actual punch, I've never seen anyone do that before. So I don't know what his game plan was in that sense. But maybe that's what he's known for now. Because like, when he beat Cowboy, it was the shoulder. So maybe he's looking for new things to hurt him with.
I'm just wondering, like, how much did Conor actually prepare for this fight? Like, in his fight camp, was he like, did he get enough sparring in? Because like, have you not seen the, like, he was talking in the post-fight interview like he had never seen the calf kick before. He was literally saying like, oh, that's a new one. Has no one thrown that on you? Like, that's part of Dustin's arsenal. Dustin's done that in many fights in the past. Have you not prepared for that?
Well, that's probably a big part of like what Khabib was saying on Twitter. It's all over Instagram these days. Like, this is what happens when you leave your team, your sparring partners, whatever. So yeah, maybe Conor did to everybody. It was just training on the pads, whatever else. And maybe he wasn't doing that much sparring. It might have maybe it was due to COVID restrictions. I'm not sure. But apparently he left his. Did he leave his team? Did he not have training partners that were on the right level? Did he do this, do that? Maybe his camp wasn't as good as he wanted it to be, or it was as good as he thought it could have been, but it wasn't good enough. Yeah. Because Dustin was training as hard as possible, and it showed, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think we've mostly covered the Conor versus Dustin. I mean, I'd like to see Conor come back and look sort of like the Conor of old, but for me, it looks like he's on the decline. And if he's coming back to fight, even like if he comes back to fight Nate Diaz, I don't know if I'd favor him to even beat Nate Diaz at this point. But I'd like to get your opinion on. We talked a little bit about Chandler versus Hooker. Chandler he looked very, very good, right? He
looked great.
He definitely,
I was surprised.
And he was the underdog for that fight too. Hooker didn't look good to me. He didn't look. I don't know if it's just because I picked these guys, but I mean, what did Hooker really do in that fight? What did Dan Hooker do? He's usually known for like being sort of like a savage, a ferocious guy who throws a lot of strikes, he's even known for being a very technical guy. But for me, Dan Hooker was just circling away. He wasn't throwing any strikes. He's like, his chin was very high in the air. I mean, as I'm watching this, it's kind of like, yeah, what do we expect? Like, Chandler's going to get him. He's going to throw those overhand. He landed the overhand left, went right to the body, overhand left. What do we expect?
I think there's a lot to be said about the mental state of Hooker at that point, because he probably assumed Chandler would go for the wrestling. I was not expecting those bombs. Also, I was looking, according to Daniel Cormier, during that fight, like, due to COVID restrictions in New Zealand, he can't go home until like end of February. So maybe his mind was just like, so messed up due to that reason. You know, I'm not sure what his family situation is like, if he has kids or not. Maybe he's missing the people he's closer with. He does. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe his mind wasn't fully there. It is like, shit, how am I supposed to wait another month to go home and see my family? Right. So there's so many things like that.
But what a bad showing though for him. What, like, in MMA, tell me if this is true or not, but you're really only as good as your last fight, right, Robbie? That there is that saying, you're only as good as your last fight. And I don't know if that's wholly true. Like, I mean, your record is there and your legacy is in place, but people always look at what happened most recently, right? People forget about the past. What happened most recently? Dan Hooker went in. He didn't look good. He wasn't really active in the offense department. He was circling away for most of the fight with his hands sort of low, and he got caught, because that's what happens when you do that against a guy like Michael Chandler, who's good. He trains with Henry Hooft, right?
Yeah. And now he's on a 2-loss streak. He lost to Poirier, now he lost to Chandler, so that's not good. Mm-hmm. And he was he was ranked number 6. So if they give Chandler a higher shot after that, I think he's going to fight a guy in the top 5 at least, or top 3 before he gets anything higher than that.
I'd like to see maybe Chandler go up against like a guy like Justin Gaethje, maybe.
That'd be interesting.
That's an interesting
those
fight.
Those two are basically the same size, built very similarly. That'd be a fun fight to watch for sure.
Yeah, so for me, I'd like to see this. I'd like to see Chandler fight Justin Gaethje. I'd like to see Conor. I'd actually like to see him take a step back and fight Nate Diaz. I'd like to see that trilogy. And meanwhile, I'd like to see, because I don't think Khabib's coming back, I say Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier.
For the title?
For the title.
I think that'd be a great lineup for sure.
I think that cleans 100%. Up the division a little bit. And then if Conor beats Nate, okay. If Dustin beats Charles Oliveira, which I actually don't think is going to happen. I think Charles is too nasty. But although, I mean, I don't know. Like, again, like I like Dustin Poirier as a person the most. In the lightweight division, the most. I like Dustin Poirier the most. But in terms of the actual the technical aspects, Charles Oliveira is my guy. Like, I'm ride or dying on Charles Oliveira's jiu-jitsu, his striking. This guy is crazy. He's crazy.
He's a crazy athlete for sure. I think he has it in him to beat Dustin Poirier.
How he almost submitted Tony Ferguson. Do you remember that in their fight?
I almost got sick, man. I thought Ferguson's arm was going to snap. Like,
oh yeah.
I was like, oh God, it's going to happen.
So
again, kudos to Tony for not tapping out. My God.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the Charles Oliveira train. We'll see what happens with the Conor versus Dustin, everything at the top. Is there any other sort of fights that you want to just highlight before we finish this up, Robbie? Anything else caught your eye at all? Or nothing really?
No, nothing really caught my eye. I think it was actually a great night of like a lot of finishes, though. Like almost all the fights ended in like some sort of TKO or submission.
Yeah. Were there any like spectacular ones other than the top 2 fights?
One of the fights prior, there was one guy from Canada who was winning, but then he got knocked. He got TKO'd, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it was a good punch though. Like he did a full on stanky leg.
Oh, he got hit I remember that. That guy's name was like Dirty Sanchez, Andrew L. Dirty Sanchez. Yeah, he got his clock clean for sure.
So that was a good finish for the other guy, whatever his name was.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, Amanda Ribas also got TKO'd by her opponent as well.
Yeah, her star was on the rise too, but that's what happens when you get sort of.
Some people lost money on her.
Yeah.
So unfortunately.
That's what happens when you get overhyped, right? Like you get overhyped and then you get sort of pushed a little bit faster and then you run into something you can't handle.
A higher level fighter for sure. Yeah. But nothing really stuck out in terms of like that was amazing and nothing like some of those spitting kicks we've seen recently. Mm-hmm. But overall, it was a good card of like fights that didn't go the distance. Yeah. I found. So it was a good show by the UFC. I think it sold like a 1.6 million pay-per-view buys. So it was a good event. Yeah. Everyone got paid.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see, I guess because in Abu Dhabi, I'm not sure what their COVID rules are, but like they're starting to put people in the stadium, like fans in the stadium. So at least you can hear
I can take it or leave it, honestly. Like the fans in the stadium, it doesn't do anything for me watching it, to be honest. Like
yeah, absolutely. But I mean, this is good for the fighters, I guess.
Yeah, good for the fighters so long as they're getting paid more, right? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But, overall, I thought it was a good card.
Good card. I thought it was a good card too, especially the main and co-main event. I look forward to seeing what happens in the top of the lightweight division. And yeah, I think hopefully everybody enjoyed our UFC 257 breakdown. I'm curious to see what other people think is going to happen to Conor McGregor. Where do they think Dustin Poirier goes from here? What about Chandler? What about Hooker? How does that the top of the division just sort of fall in place? Where do they go from here? But any last words, Robbie, before we close things out?
I'm trying to think of what I want to say. I think that Conor will definitely come back, though. I don't think he's a person to retire on a loss. Mm-hmm. So he'll definitely come back on something. Whether he's probably going to aim for the Dustin rematch over the Nate Diaz rematch. But we'll see what they agree on. But typically, what Conor wants, Conor gets. So, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up next.
Yeah. Awesome, Robbie. Okay, and I think that just about does it for our UFC 257 post-fight breakdown. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment and maybe saying that you liked the episode. Leave us a comment telling us where do you think Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor go in the future. And yeah, I think that just about does it for Two Friends Fighting. I'm Jackson.
I'm Robbie.
And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Thanks, guys. Peace out. Awesome.
Of course, that is a handsome, pretty acceptance. So there was this decline right there. It's like, oh, that's the same thing. I'm handsome, I'm pretty, I'm attractive, I'm beautiful.